Welcome back to Reimagining Our Faith. This week we are focused on the parable of the Good Samaritan. And last time I asked you to really consider the question asked of Jesus by the religious scholar when he says, "And who is my neighbor?" And I hope you asked that question of Jesus, and I hope that you took time to give space for Jesus to answer you. Today, we are going to consider two of the actors in this story, the priest and the Levite. Now, I must admit, for Jesus to mention the priest first in the story always gives me pause. The priest and I share in the same vocation, and I can't help but hear this story and wonder how I am just like the priest who angles to the other side of the road to avoid getting his hands dirty and helping a neighbor in need. The priest only has two actions in this story. First, he notices the man, and then he chooses to avoid the man. Both are active choices by him, and there is no denying that he was aware of what he was choosing to do. Then Jesus tells us about another man, a Levite who appears and notices the hurt man as well. Now, to our 21st century ears, the Levite in the story doesn't resonate the way it would have with this first audience listening to Jesus. So, to understand, let's back up just a bit. The story that Jesus tells would have been a familiar rhetorical device used by teachers at that time. It was well known that the road between Jerusalem and Jericho was not only rough terrain, but it was also a favorite place for robbers to hide and to prey upon travelers. So Jesus is not making up a story here. He is ripping one from the headlines, as the popular show Law and Order likes to say. The traveler in the story, the man who is robbed and beaten, is a Jewish man, just like Jesus and those who are hearing this story that day. The religious hierarchy of that time in Israel consisted of three orders: the high priest, the priest, and the Levites. Now, during the time of Jesus, the general responsibility of the priest was to make all the sacrifices, and the general responsibility of Levites was then to care for all the lesser matters, so to speak. Things like cleaning the building, washing the sacred vessels, preparing the lamps, arranging and leading music. Many scholars suggest that the phrase used by Jesus, "going down that road," suggests that both the priest and the Levite were on their way to participate in services at the temple. So their reluctance to help this beaten man indicates that they both value their service in God's temple perhaps more than the opportunity set before them to serve a fellow child of God. What always gets me when hearing this story is not just the priest and the Levite ignoring the man. It's that they actively moved to the other side of the road. They chose not just to ignore him, but to, as much as possible, remove themselves from being near him, seeing him, and acknowledging his presence. It's easy for us to be hard on the priest and the Levite. We want to hold them accountable for their failure to act as good religious leaders should act, but to also hold them accountable as an example of a good neighbor. But I challenge all of us to remember times when we have done similar as these two. I know of the times that I've angled away from a neighbor in need, times that I have looked away from the person standing near the stoplight holding a sign begging for help. Times that I have looked at my bank account and have held my cash a little tightly rather than trying to figure out a way to give just a little bit to those in need. Times that I have, with my inactivity, said that my love of my neighbor is just not as important as it should be. Perhaps you're like me, perhaps you're not. Perhaps you can recall similar times in your own life, times when you've ignored the need of another person that is in front of you. Please hear this. The purpose of Jesus' story is not to beat any of us up for failing to act. But it is a story that shines a light on the times when we could have acted and chose not to. It is a story about holding ourselves accountable to see, to help, and to love our neighbor. As you reimagine your faith today, ask God to keep your eyes open to see a neighbor who needs love, specifically love from you that demonstrates God's love for them. Pay attention today and this week to your neighbor in need and choose not to walk on the other side of the road, but to walk willingly toward them, to talk to them, to touch them, and to see them as a beloved child of God.